Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to Patriot to the Core podcast. This is episode number 80, and I am Thad Forrester. In 2010, Beau and Ben Wise buried their big brother, Jeremy. 2 years later, Beau traveled down that same road to bury Ben. Beau went from the youngest son to the only son. Their parents are the only known U.S. military family to lose 2 sons in Afghanistan during the 19-plus year war. In this interview, I'm privileged to have Beau and his co-author of 3 Wise Men, Tom Sileo. Jeremy was a SEAL turned CIA contractor who was killed in an Al-Qaeda sneak attack. Ben, Green Beret medic and sniper, was killed in a large-scale operation. After top U.S. officials realized that 2 Wise brothers had been lost, Beau, a Marine, was permanently pulled from the battlefield, becoming the only U.S. service member to be removed from combat as a result of such extraordinary events in Afghanistan. I had a great talk with Beau and Tom today. You may know Tom from The Stream and author of books such as Brothers Forever, 8 Seconds of Courage, and Fire in My Eyes, and now, of course, 3 Wise Men. Tom and I also had a joint book signing back in 2015 in Tuscaloosa, Alabama at Dreamland Barbecue. Had a great time with him there and meeting his family. So thank you for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, please rate it and leave a review. 5 stars are always appreciated. A review also helps as well. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoy. Tom, you wrote about this a little bit in the book, but what really drew you to this story?
Well, thanks for having us on, Thad. It's a real honor to speak with 2 Gold Star brothers at the same time, and thank you for your family's sacrifice. What drew me to the story is I just wanted to help play a small role in bringing this historic story of sacrifice to our country and to the world, and remind people that, you know, every day for the past 20 years, almost 20 years, these volunteer warriors and their families have been, you know, out in the field serving, sacrificing, and, you know, obviously this story is rare. It's the only instance in terms of the war in Afghanistan where 2 brothers have both been killed, and then, of course, Beau was pulled off the battlefield. You know, I thought what better way to illuminate and make sure Americans don't forget that not only did this happen, but it's still happening. The fight continues for the military community, and I hope this book makes a difference in reminding, you know, the 99% of us, including me, that haven't served in uniform.
It started out, or at least from your side, Tom, you were writing an article, weren't you?
I had actually there was a lengthy article in the Washington Post back in 2014 about the Wise family, and I was working on, actually it wound up being several books in a row, and didn't have time to get to it, but I always wanted to find a way to reach the Wise family. And as it turned out, the article connection was, I had written an article about a fallen hero named U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Jesse Williams, who was killed in Iraq, and as it turned out, he served with Ben Wise on that the first Iraq deployment back in 2003. And I know his wife Sonia, and had kept in touch with her over the past decade, and it was actually Sonia who put me in touch with Ben's wife Tracy, and then Tracy put me in touch with Beau. So it kind of all came together after, you know, meeting other families and working with other Gold Star families, and there was a connection there, and I'm just so grateful that, you know, it worked out, and the Wises gave me a chance to help.
Beau, what was it about Tom? Why did you decide to go with him?
Oh, there's a lot of reasons, and as you know, but first of all, Dad, thank you for having me on, and
Yes, sir.
But there was a number of different reasons, and at the top of the list, we kind of synced on a lot of ideas as far as things that, you know, things that I wanted to say, and the things that he showed the most interest in. And number one, I would say, was Jeremy and Ben's, you know, last actions being in the preservation of life, and just fighting to save as many people as they could in the midst of chaos. And that's, you know, I think the truest sign of a pure warrior. And it was just kind of exemplified how they lived. That was, you know, they lived their entire lives and their careers that way, and just kind of wanting to make some order out of everything, you know, chaotic around them. But And so when Tom and I were discussing the book idea, and as far as just preserving their legacy, everything just seemed to click. But there was a number of different reasons, but I would say that was at the top of the list.
I found some emails, Tom, the first time you contacted me. I think it was about 2012, and you wrote an article on my brother Mark. And when that was published, my oldest brother, who is very quiet, and a lot of people don't even know I have an oldest brother because he's just kind of sticks to himself. But he said, "Man, who is this guy? That was a really good article," and it was. And so since then, of course, I think I've read 3 of your books. I know I haven't read the 4 that I know of, but at least 3 of them I've got. And I know, Tom, you do a great job. And this book it took me a good month, I think, to read it because I'm kind of a slow reader. And I also have a house full of boys, and I do it when I can. But very captivating book. Beau, how would you describe your relationship with your brothers and your sister while y'all were growing up?
Jeremy used the Leave It to Beaver reference often. And it was. We had, a magical childhood. It was absolutely amazing. And this little town, El Dorado, Arkansas, about, 10, 20 miles from the Louisiana border. But we lived in a few different houses, but we were always in the country, And my dad was an only child, and I think he was kind of a miracle baby. He couldn't have siblings. And Jeremy articulated once that Dad gave us the childhood that he always wanted. You know what I mean? He wanted a big family. He wanted country. And so after he finished his internship and residency at the Los Angeles VA, he moved his practice to Southern Arkansas and went back to the roots and just gave us like everything that, he wanted. And we had amazing parents. And, so we were all pretty close growing up, even though there was a big age gap. Jeremy being 10 years my elder, who would have turned 47 yesterday. Anyway, but, in some ways that was kind of cool because I wasn't a rival, you know what I mean? I was kind of like a pet or a toy. You could take me everywhere, And eventually all 4 of us just got closer and closer as the years went on.
Music came about a lot in the book. Y'all, of course, music is a powerful, it takes me back to certain moments or periods in my life. What was some of the music that y'all liked?
Well, our household was so, Christian and kind of strict in a lot of ways. As Tom, tells the story of Halloween, but it was, Harvest Festival in our house, Yeah. So like there was a lot of Christian music. We all grew up in like the youth band or the praise and worship band, singing. Heather, play piano or sing, and and Ben would play bass or guitar, and Jeremy guitar, and myself and drums, So, but the Christian music we grew up on, the Christian hair metal phase. I don't know if you guys remember Resurrection Band or Rez or Bride or all that stuff. So that was in the house, but whenever Mom and Dad were out of the house, it was Van Halen or Ozzy and stuff like that. But and Black Label Society, Jeremy was a big Black Label fan. But for the most part, it was Christian through and through at the core. That's just kind of who we are.
There was one particular group you mentioned that I had never heard of back from the mid '90s, but I was kind of mainstream, whatever was on the radio, basically, or whatever my brothers listened to. But some of those that indie stuff or the smaller name bands, I definitely didn't know. There's a part early in the book you get in a fight with Ben, a pretty good fight, I think you punched him, or he punched you. But I want you to, if you don't mind explaining, just because this kind of gives a good picture of y'all's relationship, because Jeremy got y'all together and Ben actually sincerely apologized. I'm sorry, brother. Can you forgive me? I don't think that would have ever happened in my house. It may have. I don't think we were that way, unfortunately. But Jeremy gave y'all a talking to, and he's like, look, someday we're going to be old, fat, bald, maybe broke. Our wives may leave us, but we always have each other. No matter what happens, you'll always have 2 brothers to lean on. Do you remember that vividly?
Oh, yeah. I've told people before that Jeremy, for instance, being the oldest, being the most classic A-type personality, so demonstrative, like one of the things that, he took his failures professionally, but he took our failures personally, particularly mine and Ben's. Heather was a golden child. Everybody knew she was going to be valedictorian and all, and so he never had to worry about Heather. We were the ones that he just constantly worried about, growing up. But I remember the fight, and I can say honestly, looking back, that I don't think, and fights got like that between him and Ben, and he never pulled himself back. But when he saw it between us, he knew that he had to step in and stop that from happening. And every now and again, when he would fight hard, but he would apologize hard too if he thought he was in the wrong. And so when Jeremy, pulled us aside, it was just kind of a realization. I just saw him go from play where he was just enjoying watching the fight, and then it was, oh, this just got real. And to this day, I really don't know what he told Ben when he pulled him aside. And I remember swinging a punch. I'm not really sure if it landed or glanced or whatever. I just remember I wanted to kill him. And, but when Jeremy and Ben came back in the room, Ben's expression was different. I mean, it clearly, whatever he said absolutely resonated with him. And that was, Jeremy was, and that was, I thought, one of the best stories, when Tom and I were going through this, and, and I think Tom thought the same thing. And, again, one more thing, how I know I got the right co-author. He was perfect for it. That story just kind of, really tells how Jeremy was the glue, the center of gravity for the four of us.
Yeah, that was good. Was that one of those you had forgotten about, and then either just through the course of talking about the book, or maybe Tom asking the right questions, that it came back to your remembrance?
Maybe, I remember getting thrown into the arm wall. that part didn't leave you again. Like the mirror, it was like this oval shaped mirror, and the frame busted and it dislocated, and we'll worry about how explaining that to Mom later. Jeremy was just like, all right, I've got to diffuse this right now. But yeah, there's a lot of things that, I had forgotten that have come back to me over the years. And the childhood, most of that comes back pretty good. I mean, some of the things were pretty vague, but just talking about it and, journaling and then just talking to Tom. And I think within a year, I probably told Tom more than I've told anybody else. And it just was a very cathartic process, and a lot of things just started to come out.
I think it is a great sign of a good co-author, and a person who writes is a good listener and asking good questions. Ben being the middle son, ended up joining the military before Jeremy. But Jeremy ended up, and just correct me on anything, but he ended up going to medical school. He'd already gotten his white coat, and shortly after 9/11, President Bush addressed the country. You talk about Jeremy, he really just, he didn't want to be a doctor. He just wanted to,
right.
There's actually some awesome lines in here about Jeremy, how he wanted to basically fight terrorists. Yeah, that was Jeremy, right? It wasn't Ben, where you had basically the kick stuff.
Yes.
And yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
But Jeremy, shortly after President Bush addressed the nation, roughly 10 days after 9/11, I think you were with Jeremy, weren't you? And there was what kind of impact did that have on you and him both?
I thought maybe it was an emotional reaction, and I thought it's one thing to enlist for emotional reasons, but to drop out of med school. And so for once I had the same hesitation that the rest of the family did. Like, dude, you are in med school. You're almost done. Like it's all you got to do is finish. But he was 27 and approaching the cutoff age. And this was just in his, near his apartment just outside of UAMS in Little Rock. And as you said, one of the things that he said, he was 27, and 28 is the cutoff age for buds. And so for him, in his mind, it was now or never. And 9/11 was just the straw that broke the camel's back. And he said, I stopped asking questions after, he said, look, 20 years from now, I can look back and say a number of different things. Either I could have been a doctor or I could have been a Navy SEAL. I can't live with the latter. I've got to be a Navy SEAL. And I was just like, okay, there's no talking him out of this. When Jeremy commits to something, that's it.
Yeah, there was some symbolism there where his white coat was laying on the floor.
Yeah.
Like he was done, basically.
Yeah.
While Jeremy was in and maybe this is while he was deployed, Beau, he was like either ran it or he contributed to some publication called The Horse's Ass. What was that?
That was something that Tom discovered, when doing the interviews with the SEALs and the Green Berets. And now, Jeremy was a professional smartass, and this is one of those things that as we were going through interviews, when we were going through the book, and like Tom would call me like, "Hey, did you know about this? Did you know about that?" It's like, "Nope." And it's good, having those little comic moments as heavy as this manuscript was. By the time we got done with it, that was a good, breath of fresh air for me, just reconnecting with Jeremy's sense of humor. And he wasn't scared to speak truth to power, and sometimes it came off a little bit sarcastically, but Navy SEALs have even the higher up you go, even they still have a pretty good appreciation for sarcasm, especially when it's delivered as professionally as he could do.
I know. Tom, was there anything about The Horse's Ass, maybe some articles you found that were just, maybe not appropriate for the book, or what did you find out about it, especially something that maybe we wouldn't know by reading the book?
Yeah, I did not see any articles. I mean, it was a long time ago, and I'm not even sure, none of the SEALs I talked to still had copies of it, but, so that was from memory in terms of, the things they would write about. It was definitely something that was between, the SEALs on the ground, and it's not something that was being delivered to their commanding officers, so I'll just put it that way. But yeah, it was just one of those things that I thought was interesting, something you wouldn't think of about Navy SEALs deployed to Iraq, during a very dangerous time, but just something they did to, not only keep each other updated, in their own language of what was happening, but also poke fun at some of the things that they may have seen on a daily basis that, could have been handled better. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was definitely, I sensed the sarcasm and the smart, the quick wit that Jeremy must have had for that. That was funny. Beau, what can you tell us about Jeremy gets in, he's in the SEALs, he's on the teams, and what can you tell us about that battle where, because he was out of the SEALs and he was working for the CIA, I believe. Mm-hmm. What can you tell us about that last day?
Well, he was one of two guys contracted through XZ himself and Dane Parisi. And Dane was, don't quote me on the number, I believe it was like 16 or 17-year soldier, Green Beret, combat veteran through and through. And he and Dane had a good working relationship, and they were two of the guys on the ground that were, there to protect the agency team. And Tom, correct me on the pronunciation, Balawi, al-Balawi, I believe is how you say it.
Yes.
And it was a Jordanian doctor who we thought was our source, and we thought that we had connected him and that he had turned on Al-Qaeda, when in fact he was a triple agent from the get-go that was, deliberately embedded himself into the agency to get close to him. And against advice, he was brought inside the fob without being taken to a safe house or anything, and they were trying to befriend him, long story short, and he set off a suicide vest inside the fob and killed 7 of the team members of the CIA 7 that are on the wall at Langley. And that's pretty much it. I mean, there's more to it, of course, but, in 2009, we didn't get a whole lot of information. Everything just was very, very vague off the bat because looking back, I think the agency didn't want to make the mistake of giving us partial or incorrect information. So information was held until they had 100% of it, and then they debriefed the families.
So when you said he wasn't taken to a safe house, the guy, the terrorist, basically, so he wasn't searched, right? Even though people, I think including Jeremy, thought that was crazy.
Yeah, and Joby Warwick as Tom pointed out, did a phenomenal job, covering this story as in depth as you possibly can. And there are